So this is the third video in the face drawing series, and this video will focus on eyebrows. So when we did the proportions for the face, the position of the eyes to the nose, to the mouth, to the ears, the neck are pretty standard from person to person. But when it comes to eyebrows, their location changes drastically from right down above the eye to way up here on the forehead. So I brought up Beyonce as an example, and you can see, look at how much space there is between her eye and her eyebrow. Compare that to Justin Trudeau. Look at how farther down his eyebrows are on his face. So as usual, we need to do a little bit of math before we can do some drawing. So let's take a scrap piece of paper and figure out the math on this image first. Okay, so information we already know. Here's the top of the head, we've got that. Here's the middle of the eyes, we've already got that. So once again, make my math nice and easy. I'm just gonna kind of go right in the middle of these two. That's halfway down. Well, that doesn't help me. Okay, let's go halfway from here to here. And so half of a half is a quarter. And now I've got the information I kind of need, because if you look, her eyebrow is right in the middle of those two. So it goes down a little lower at the front. And no, right there at the end is exactly in the middle of these two spaces. So that is where the eyebrows are going to be on her face. And you can see if we switch to Justin Trudeau, that is not where the eyebrows are going to be. His is the bottom of the eyebrows, assuming that's the top of his head, is the bottom of his eyebrows would be at the spot where the middle of hers are. Okay, so now we can take our math and we can transfer it to our drawing. So, zoom out for a minute. Okay, so I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I am going to go from the top of the head, here's the middle of the eyes, and I'm going to go halfway. Remember, you can just fold a piece of paper, make life easy, and that will give me the halfway mark. And then what did we do? We divided it in half again. Once again, I'm just going to fold a piece of paper. Okay, and then what did we do? We found out that if we go right in the middle of those two, that's where her eyebrows, on Beyonce's face, that's where the eyebrows go. Okay, so now I can give myself a nice light blocking line. Once again, I'm using the edge of a piece of paper. I'm aligning my two edges to make sure that my blocking line is nice and straight across the page. Okay, now that we've done the math, we can go ahead and start drawing the shape. So let's go back to Beyonce's. Now, in this case, she's obviously given someone the eye because her eyebrows are arched really high. We won't do ours quite that much. So when it comes to where they start, where they stop, again, obviously that changes from person to person, because let's face it, some people have unibrows. They just go right across and never stop. Hers, of course, are professionally done. And if you go from the inside of the eye up on a bit of an angle, you can kind of see what the angle is for the inside of the eyebrows. So I often will do that. I'll just take my pencil and I'll go, there's the angle, and then I go like this, there's the angle. I'm going to do the same thing. Usually it's almost a 45-degree angle for outer corners. Once again, she has hers raised a bit, but if we were to look at this side, it would be a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to go like this. And then you would just do the same thing on your outside. So now that we've got the math, we know where to position it, we know where to start, we know where to stop. Let's go to the what not to do. So again, here's our eyeball. All right, there's our eyeball. So what you don't want to do is go like this, because when you're drawing hair or fur, If you want short hair, you draw a short line. If you want long hair, you draw a long line. If you have straight hair, draw a straight line, right? So when you draw one single line like this, you're just saying that someone has one big long hair that's just like wrapped around their head. And of course, that's not true. The eyebrows are short little hairs, you know, something around that length. So we also have to look at the direction of eyebrows. So if we zoom right up, so they go up and to the right, to the outside on this side, right? So they're always going up this way. And you can see they really change from one person to the other, right? It's hard to see on his, but his are much bushier, much more uneven, where hers are, of course, done to perfection. All right, so let's start drawing the eyebrows. Okay, so step number one, of course, if you've got your blocking lines too dark, go back and erase those blocking lines before you do anything else. Don't want to see them. Get them nice and light. Oh, okay. So starting here, I'm going to start with short little lines. And I'm just going to kind of go up, and then I'm just going to kind of angle it down again. Like I said, when you actually are copying off of a photo, that would help because you can figure out the shape. And it's the sort of thing you want to take your time and you want to start to build it up. So around the edges of eyebrows, we're going to see a little bit of the individual hairs, but when you get into this middle area, you're going to have a lot more. It'll look solid. So just like when we did eyelashes, you don't want to do this. You don't want to have exactly the same length of line parallel next to each other. That's very fake. You want to have one like this, like this. They want to be like this a bit, where there's a couple that are out of place, a couple that are going in slightly different directions. That's much more natural. So I'm going to go ahead and start building up the surface. So this is how you do fur. Same thing. You just look at the length of the line, you look at the direction of the line, and you start to build it up. And like I said, I mean, obviously someone on Beyonce has had a salon do her eyebrows to perfection, so she would never have these loose little hairs like that. But most of the rest of us, yeah, we do. We'll often have one or two little loose ones here, maybe an extra little one there. That's what creates the realism. So once you have the eyebrows, we're just going to go ahead and do the shading of the eye area. So this is really important because the eyes are sunk into your face. So I'm going to go back to our reference again. And in order to see that the eyes are sunk in, there's always a shadow. So this shadow here and here has to be present on all face drawings to show us that the nose sticks up and the eyes are sunk in. So when we start shading the eyes, we're actually also creating the top of the nose. So we're going to start by putting this shadow in. Also, we're going to have a big shadows down in here to show that we're set back in. And it gets darker down here and it gets lighter as we come up to the eyebrows because the eyebrows are on our forehead. They're not recessed like eyes are. We also are going to do the shading down here at the bottom. Once again, because of the eye socket, remember the diagram of that, you always have this little shadow right there to show the roundness of the eye. And we also need to put the lower lashes in. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is figure out where am I going to start this shading in the middle. And a safe place to kind of do it is if I just go from the corner to this line, I'm just going to go halfway, right about there. So again, from the middle to the eye about halfway, and then you can go back adjust it if someone has a wide nose or if they have a narrow nose, but that'll kind of get us started for this one. So once again, I'm going to use a smudgy. If not, a Kleenex will work fine. And again, you've got a couple ways to do this. You can go and just shade on a separate piece of paper and then use the Tortillon to start getting a nice smooth shadow in here. And it's going to look so bad when you start to do this, I'm not gonna lie. Your drawing kind of looks like someone punched an egg, but it will be okay once we get the rest of it shaded. So we just kind of want to come in here. I'm just gonna fade it out. And notice I'm going around. You always shade in the direction, so we're trying to make this look kind of round in here. So I'm going to kind of swoop this way. Of course, you can always just use your pencil and learn to control that pencil. And then go back in. So the minute I did that, I was like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, because it just ages her so much. So I'm going to kind of go back in with the eraser and get rid of those lines. I like to just really slowly build up my shading, taking the time, doing it slowly, not rushing it. And I'm going to start. So that's why I like to do this. I like to just, I find it less scary to just go like this and then just to use the smudgies to start to build up the shading. Okay, now we're going to go over here. This is why we started to shade before we did the eyelashes, so we wouldn't end up smucking all that work. So remember, don't go crazy over top of those eyelashes, or if you find that you got them all smudgy, then just go back and kind of redo your lines a little bit. So it's darker down here because this is the back of the eye lid back here, and we have to go darker and then slowly get lighter as we come up to this area, and that's going to start sinking the eye back in the page. And we're just going to go a little bit here, and then this part here we really need to go back and get a bit of that shadow. So the secret of shading for high realism is don't suddenly stop shading. So when you go, if I was to go like this and then stop, I just created a line and this looks fake. So by always going back and blending it slowly back to light, so I'm just going to go back and forth a little bit, it starts to create much more realism. So you've also got to remember that when you're looking off a photograph, yes, the photograph is artificial lighting and it absolutely stops. As an artist, you need to make changes to make things look more realistic. This is a two-dimensional photograph. You are trying to create the illusion of three-dimension. So never just suddenly stop. And even, I mean, we can do this when you do the more focus on the nose, but even this edge here, I'm going to just go back and soften that edge. Just so it doesn't suddenly stop. Okay, so at this point we need to do the lower lashes. So I waited to do those until I did all this shading first. Okay, so important things to realize is the lower lashes don't touch this lower line like this. They don't do that. There is a thickness of skin. So if I draw from the side, there's your eyelashes, there's your upper lid, there's your eyebrows. There's actually this lower lid has a thickness to it right here. There's a space, and the eyelashes actually start there. So in order to show that, you need to leave a space. So let me just zoom right in for you. So the one thing about the lower eyelashes, you don't really want to draw a lot of attention to them. So starting in the middle, you're going to leave a space, and it's just going to curve out a little bit this way. As we go towards the corner, you're just going to go a little bit shorter, a little bit shorter. That's going to help to create the illusion of this is a sphere. See, if you've got one going straight out, it's going to go straight down like this, and then going this way. So they're not like the upper lashes at all. There's much fewer of them. They're more spaced out, and they go out something like that. Obviously, if someone has a lot of makeup on, then they're going to be much different. So if you look at like Beyonce, she's got all the makeup on, she's got eyeliner on here, she's got mascara. So then you would go back and thicken and fill to get that look. But if you compare her lower lashes to her upper lashes, they're still way more solid and thick on the top, even with this much makeup on. If you go, oh, they look a little too dark, remember, we're just really looking at these details now because the rest of the face isn't done yet. Later, you won't even notice them. But of course, you can always just go back and lighten them if you need to. And that is the end of this lesson.